started to think of writing the novel as you're in a completely pitch dark cave and you're in some kind of gigantic some gigantic cavern. And in this pitch darkness, you come upon an enormous statue. And then you spend the next X number of years, months, whatever, feeling the contours of this statue, which is already wholly made, like a blind person feels a face. And that image you create based on feeling that pitch dark statue, which you will never see, which is the ideal version of your book. That imaginative rendering of this thing that's already there, that's your novel.
I find it an enormous comfort knowing that every attempt will fall short just by the virtue of it's being attempted, and that is to just agree with you. I'm in violent agreement with that image because it is like this dim inclination I have to tell this particular story. It's
a beautiful phrase, by the way, a dim inclination. I love that.
Well, I probably appropriated it from T.S. Eliot or something, the hints and guesses in his quartets. Anyway,
dim inclination is good.
Okay, cool. Well, you will fall short, and the attempt is you just make the attempt as good as it can possibly be, knowing that it won't be right.
Joseph Conrad talks about that in one of his introductions. I feel remiss not recalling which one exactly, but Joseph Conrad did a series of introductions in his body of work to quite a few of his novels. And in one of them, he talks about, not only does he talk about falling short of that ideal, and that is almost both the curse and the permanent aspirational aspect of being a writer. But then he also makes it a dramatic / thematic part of his work in The Secret Sharer. And, The Secret Sharer is about a guy who, basically when he's first the captain of a ship, lets on a stowaway who's a kind of doppelganger. But one of the things he says that sort of becomes a question that the entire narrative asks is, I wanted to see if I matched up to my ideal self, my ideal sense of self. And I mean, you know what I mean? Like, in other words, I have this idea of myself as X, a great seaman, but will the living of that ideal, will the living of that occupation show that I fall short of that? Or will I actually, is my ideal sense of self, is it corroborated by how I handle myself? And, that's kind of the patience game of again, writing a novel, because, you have these, as I said, you have these moments that you really wanted to get to that pull you forward. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to bring all of my game to rendering these things and make them as beautiful and as moving as they have been to me for so many years, because they've been like lodestars. I've been dwelling on these things. When I have been thinking about writing Playworld since I was a staff writer, special projects editor at the Nashville scene. I used to have that title like taped above my computer that just said Playworld. But what did I know at that time? I was not ready to write, to tell some of those stories. So, this is like early aughts.
Yeah. That is a great segue to this kind of observation / question, which is one of the things that I'm so, why I come back to reading novels over and over again is because they are, in their very existence, an answer to a great question. That's the only reason to write a novel, I think. And it's really difficult to find a subject like the one Conrad wrote about, right, is a worthy subject to devote that kind of effort, time, word count toward answering. And I have a feeling of what I feel like the question being posed by Playworld is, but I wonder if you would put a few words toward that, or would you rather say, should I say what my impression is?
Going back to where we started this conversation, I'd love to hear yours.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll hear yours first, and then I'll either riff on it. By the way, if it's really good, I'll be like, oh yeah, that's right. That was my question.
That'll be a feather in my cap. That was my question
the whole time, Korby.
Well, I think there's a lot of themes going on. One is the tension between filial loyalty and one's personal desires. Okay, so
100%.
Griffin is so torn between fulfilling his father's wishes, and that relationship is so fraught and complicated and interesting and loving. Well, and that's why I was kind of saving the best for last.
Griffin adores his father.
And I feel like one of the things that's so attractive about this novel, I was about to use the word mature, but that seems like a strange thing to put toward an author a little bit older than me. Who am I to say? But there's not an antagonist in this book, except perhaps in Keppelman.
The wrestling coach.
Even Keppelman has sort of redeeming qualities. You see, like, this guy really, I think he does root for his kids. Whatever. That's maybe all I'll say about that right now. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but by and large, the people that fill the world of Playworld are looked upon affectionately. Is that a fair observation?
Absolutely. I want to do this though, because I think it's sort of important, especially in a novel this big, which is just when I say big, I mean like just this long. I'm gonna give the quickest synopsis. I mean, what is Playworld about? Playworld is about a really formative, consequential year in the life of this child actor, Griffin Hurd. It begins when he's 14 years old and it ends when he's 15. It takes place in 1980, end of the Carter administration, beginning of the Reagan administration. And it's about a series of things that happen to him and a series of choices that are presented to him over the course of this year, which build toward, the question that he has to answer, which maybe what the question you thought maybe it was, is like, is he going to continue acting? Because if he continues acting, it looks like really good things are going to come to him, or at least good things in the sense of how Americans think of good things. Wealth, fame,
prosperity, yes.
Wealth, fame, and all of its attendant pleasures. One of the questions you asked earlier, what connection do I see between Mr. Peanut, and I'd add, ladies and gentlemen, and this book, and it's something I'm really obsessed with. It's bound up in one of the therapist Eliot's aphorisms. Griffin is seeing, the whole family sees this therapist named Eliot, and in some ways, Eliot is like, he's both he's a brilliant therapist for adults, but he's kind of a shitty therapist for a kid. And I would say that over the course of the novel, he either becomes a better therapist with Griffin, or Griffin grows up enough that Griffin's adult-ish enough that they can actually talk to each other, because they don't. But one of the things Eliot says is, one of Eliot's aphorisms, I mean, I made these up, but I love this one, is if life is cyclical, lengthen your diameter. And so, if we struggle to change, or we keep circling around certain kinds of struggles, maybe make the circle as big as possible. So I would say that one of the things I've always been obsessed with, and this is true in Mr. Peanut again, and the other works of fiction, is to what degree are we capable of change, of slow evolution, and to what degree does the past exert either a regressive or just inertial pull on our characters, and we can't change. And I think if you thought about the novel in those terms, and again, this was not something where I'm like pegboard, but I do find that I cycle around this as maybe like a central theme. I would say that, whereas Mr. Peanut's about marriage and about cyclicality in marriage, and those are local problems, right? Mm-hmm. Playworld does have this political dimension. Playworld is trying to talk about America in these terms. Mm. So, because I did a lot of research into these things, and I do think about the question about how much America has changed. And it's funny, one of the greatest things that was said to me, one of my young editors at the Sewanee Review, where I'm the editor, he read it, and he's young, he's in his mid-20s. And he said, in spite of all the technological change, in spite of like the way in which so much of life is digital and all the ways in which life right now doesn't look like necessarily life in the 80s, he said, has nothing changed since 1980? Mm-hmm. And I think partly what he was talking about was the political discourse. Mm. So these are things that, that's a really central theme of mine, I would say.
Hey, thanks for watching. Go ahead and click here to like and subscribe. You can click right there to watch another video, or click here to watch a playlist featuring songs of the Morse Code podcast. Okay, thank you very much.